What makes this story unbelievable isn't just the challenge, it's the timing. With barely any warning, Katherine Legge is about to attempt one of the most brutal feats in all of motorsports, running both the Indianapolis 500 and NASCAR's Coca-Cola 600 on the exact same day. That's over 1,100 miles. Two completely different race cars, two completely different racing styles, and almost no margin for error. But here's the part that changes the conversation entirely. If she pulls this off, Legge becomes the first woman in history to ever attempt the double. And suddenly this stops being just a racing story. Now it's about legacy. Because what Katherine Legge is trying to do next weekend is something most professional drivers would never even consider. Late Tuesday night, reports confirmed that Legge secured a last-minute agreement to race both events on May 24th. She was already locked into the Indy 500, driving the number 11 Chevrolet for HMD Motorsports with AJ Fort Racing support. Now she'll also drive the number 40 Cubs. 78 Chevrolet for Live Fast Motorsports and the Coke 600 is Charlotte Motor Speedway, and this entire operation reportedly came together only weeks before race day. That alone is insane. Most double attempts are planned months in advance because the logistics are almost impossible. You're talking about race prep, travel coordination, physical endurance, backup plans, weather concerns, sponsorship approvals, and adapting between two completely different racing disciplines in a single afternoon. This isn't just difficult, it's chaos with a stopwatch attached to it. And yet, Legge is going for it anyway. Now to understand why this matters, you have to understand how rare the double actually is. Only a handful of drivers have ever attempted it. Tony Stewart did it, Kurt Busch did it, Kyle Larson tried it recently, John Andretti and Robbie Gordon are part of that club too, but only Tony Stewart successfully completed every lap in both races. That tells you how unforgiving this challenge really is. Even elite drivers struggle to survive it, and now Legge is stepping into that pressure with arguably less preparation time than any modern attempt we've seen. But there's another reason this story is getting massive attention across motorsports. Legge isn't a full-time NASCAR Cup driver. She's not chasing playoff points. She's not tied down by NASCAR's increasingly strict waiver rules. That gives her freedom most current Cup stars simply do not have. Remember what happened with Kyle Larson last season. The Indy 500 rain delay completely wrecked the schedule, and NASCAR's modern playoff structure suddenly turned the double into a major risk for full-time drivers. If you miss the Coke 600 because Indianapolis runs late, your entire season can take a hit. NASCAR basically made it harder for championship contenders to even attempt this challenge anymore. That's why Larson himself later admitted the logistics may not even be worth it. And honestly, he may be right, which is exactly why Legge's situation feels different. She doesn't have a championship hanging over her head. That changes the strategy completely. This is no longer about protecting points. It's about making history. And strategically, that might actually give her a better chance to embrace the experience instead of treating it like a business calculation. But let's be honest here. This is still incredibly dangerous from a performance standpoint. People underestimate how physically exhausting this challenge is. The Indy 500 alone drains drivers mentally and physically because of the constant precision required at over 200 miles per hour. Then only hours later, Legge would jump into a completely different car for NASCAR's longest race of the season, 600 miles under the lights in Charlotte. Different braking, different cornering, different race rhythm, different cockpit environment. Your body has to recalibrate instantly. That's why even great drivers have struggled with the transition. And for Legge specifically, there's another layer here people are watching closely. Experience. She has extensive racing history across multiple disciplines, including IndyCar, IMSA, Formula E, endurance racing, and NASCAR. But her NASCAR Cup experience is still limited compared to the drivers who usually attempt something this extreme. That matters because the Coke 600 is not forgiving. Fatigue becomes a major factor late in that race, especially after already spending hours at Indianapolis earlier in the day, and weather could destroy everything. That's the wild card nobody can control. If Indianapolis gets delayed, the entire plan becomes a disaster instantly. The travel window is already razor thin. Legge will reportedly helicopter from the speedway to an airport, fly to North Carolina, then helicopter again to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Every minute matters. One delay changes the entire outcome, and that's why teams prepare backup drivers for situations like this. Now here's where the deeper conversation begins. This attempt is bigger than results, much bigger. Because Legge understands exactly what this represents culturally inside motorsports. Women in top-level American racing are still incredibly rare. That's just reality. After Danica Patrick stepped away, NASCAR went years without a female Cup driver appearing regularly at the top level. Legge herself has openly admitted there's concern about the lack of young female talent currently close to breaking through nationally. So this attempt becomes symbolic whether people admit it or not. It's visibility, it's representation, and it's proof that opportunities in motorsports don't always have to follow the traditional path. That's also why her partnership with ELF Bot Cosmetics matters here. This isn't just sponsorship money, this is branding strategy colliding with motorsports culture. A beauty company funding one of the most physically demanding challenges in racing creates a very different image than the sport traditionally projects. And whether longtime fans love that or hate it, it absolutely gets attention. From a business perspective, this is brilliant. From a motorsports perspective, it's disruptive. And from a media perspective, it's exactly the kind of crossover story racing desperately wants more of. Now let's talk realistic outcomes. Best case scenario, Legge qualifies cleanly for the Coke 600, survives Indianapolis without major issues, arrives in Charlotte on time, and finishes both races competitively. If that happens, this instantly becomes one of the biggest feel-good stories of the entire racing season. Not because she wins, but because simply completing this challenge would earn enormous respect across both garages. And if she somehow delivers a surprise top finish in either race, the attention around her skyrockets overnight. But the worst case scenario is obvious too. A crash, a mechanical issue, a weather delay, travel problems, fatigue setting in late. Any one of those can end the entire attempt immediately. That's how fragile the double really is. And history shows this challenge almost never goes perfectly. At the end of the day though, this story is about ambition. Katherine Legge could have easily stayed comfortable running one race. Instead, she chose one of the hardest days imaginable in professional racing. And whether this works or not, people are going to remember the attempt. Because opportunities like this rarely happen. And drivers willing to risk failure publicly for something historic are becoming increasingly uncommon in modern motorsports. So now the question becomes, is Katherine Legge making history next weekend, or taking on a challenge that's simply too extreme to survive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And for more high-level motorsports coverage and deep analysis, subscribe to Sportswire USA.